I hadn't felt that kind of excitement in years, the nervous, glowing kind that sits in your chest like a spark waiting to catch. My parents' 40th anniversary was coming up, and for once I wanted to give them the surprise. They'd done so much for me, I thought. Or at least, that's what I believed back then. I'd spent weeks planning it. A dinner with their favorite recipes, Mom's lemon chicken, Dad's roasted potatoes with rosemary, and a handmade album I'd been building since college, full of pictures from their early days. It even had a Polaroid of their first apartment, where the wallpaper was peeling, and Dad was grinning like he'd won the lottery. I had it all wrapped in gold ribbon, tucked neatly into my tote as I drove the 2 hours back to my hometown. The closer I got, the more memories came rushing back. The smell of lilacs from Mom's garden that used to waft through my childhood window. The scratchy sound of Dad's jazz records on Sunday mornings. I even caught myself smiling at the thought of their bickering, the way she'd scold him for leaving his mug on the piano, and he'd wink, saying, "It's artistic placement." That house had always been alive, loud, familiar, safe. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the blinds were drawn. The carport was empty, Dad's old sedan nowhere in sight. Maybe he'd taken Mom out for lunch, I thought. Perfect. That would give me time to set up. I let myself in with the key that still hung from my old keychain, the one with a cracked heart charm. Inside, the air felt different. Not just empty, heavy. The scent of lilacs was faint, stale, as though the flowers had died days ago. The walls seemed grayer. Even the old clock ticked slower, each sound echoing like a reminder that something was off. "Hello?" I called softly. No answer. I set my tote on the counter and pulled out the album, placing it at the center of the dining table. That table had seen birthdays, arguments, laughter, years of life. I wanted it to witness one more happy memory. That's when I saw the papers, a neat stack in a manila folder, right where the anniversary cake should have gone. The words "petition for dissolution of marriage" were stamped in bold across the top. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd misread. Maybe it was paperwork for something else, a will or an insurance form. But then I saw it. Their names. My parents' names. And below them, a typed line that made my stomach twist. Witness and executor, Leah Morris. My name. I froze. There was a pen beside the folder. One of Mom's fancy fountain pens, the kind she only used for important things. The ink was still glistening on the last page, half-dried. My first thought was that it couldn't be real. They'd been together for 40 years. They'd had rough patches, sure, but divorce? And why was I involved? I sat down, my hands trembling as I turned the first page. The words blurred, but I forced myself to read. Assets divided. House to be sold within 6 months. Retirement funds split. And there, at the bottom, a note. Leah has been informed and will facilitate the process. My vision tunneled. Informed? No one had informed me of anything. My pulse pounded in my ears as I flipped through more pages. There were emails printed out, stapled to the back, between my parents and some law firm. One of them said, "She'll handle it with discretion as discussed." She? Me? I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the tile. It sounded violent in the silence of that house. I thought about the last time I'd spoken to them, 2 weeks ago. Mom had been cheerful, telling me not to fuss about their anniversary. "We're too old for parties," she'd laughed. "You just focus on yourself, sweetheart." Dad had been quieter than usual, but that wasn't new. He'd been retreating for years, like a tide pulling farther and farther back. Still, to plan a divorce behind my back? To use my name? My signature wasn't on the papers, but everything about it screamed complicity. My mind spiraled. Were they planning to tell me tonight? Had they already told other people? Did relatives know before I did? I looked around the house. Every framed photo suddenly felt like a lie. The picture of them on the porch, laughing with their arms around each other. The vacation snapshot from Myrtle Beach where Dad had written "Forever" on the back. I went to the kitchen for water but stopped halfway. There was a half-empty mug on the counter. Dad's mug, cold coffee, which meant they were home. A thud upstairs confirmed it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I hesitated, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't want to see them yet, not until I understood what I was walking into. I picked up the papers again, scanning for something, anything that explained why they'd drag me into this. That's when I saw the last page. It listed contact numbers for lawyers and financial advisors, and under Executor responsibilities it read, ensure compliance of both parties, including sale of residence. The house. The one I grew up in. The one that held every memory of who we used to be. Tears blurred the words. I wiped them angrily away. I whispered to myself, why me? Why would they— Leah! The sound of her voice made me flinch. Mom stood in the doorway, still holding her purse, eyes wide. She froze when she saw the table, the open folder, me sitting there with the papers in my lap. For a second, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was suffocating. Her face changed. Shock first, then something else. Guilt. Maybe even annoyance. She started, then stopped. She set her purse down carefully. Too carefully. As if not to wake a sleeping monster. You weren't supposed to— Her voice trembled. I stood, my own voice shaky. What is this, Mom? Her lips parted, but no words came. The only sound was that clock ticking in the background, steady, merciless. Finally, she whispered, you weren't supposed to see that yet. That single sentence, so quiet, so measured, felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. Not what it was. Not why I was on it, just when I was supposed to find out. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about a divorce. This was something bigger, something planned. The warmth I'd carried into that house, the nostalgia, the love, the pride, evaporated in an instant. All that was left was the bitter taste of betrayal, and the haunting thought that maybe, for years, I'd been living in a story they'd already decided to end. The next morning, the air in that house felt like walking through smoke, thick with things unspoken. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those papers. My name printed beneath theirs like some twisted inheritance. Mom was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, humming to herself, pretending everything was normal. The smell of burnt toast lingered, her tell whenever she was nervous. She looked up when I entered, eyes flicking to my face, then to the table where the folder had been. It was gone. I made coffee, she said, too casually. Where are the papers? My voice sounded strange to me, flat, unfamiliar. She sighed, wiping her hands on a dish towel like she was cleaning away the question. Leah, this isn't how I wanted you to find out. It was inevitable, really. Your father and I, things haven't been right for a long time. Inevitable? I repeated. Then why was my name on them? Why am I the executor? Her tone sharpened. Because someone has to be responsible. You're the logical choice. You're organized, sensible. Mom, that's not my marriage. That's yours. She blinked at me like I was being unreasonable, like I'd interrupted a well-rehearsed monologue. We were doing this for you, to spare you the mess later. You'll understand when you're older. I laughed bitterly. Mom, I'm 38. Her lips thinned. Exactly. You should appreciate that we're trying to handle things cleanly. You've always hated conflict. That line landed with a sting because it was true, but only because of them. My entire childhood was built on avoiding conflict, patching up their silences with smiles and compromises. I was the referee, the messenger, the buffer. I stared at her across the table and, for the first time, I didn't see my mother. I saw a woman rewriting history to make herself look noble. I walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. Dad was in the den, sitting in his recliner, the morning light spilling over his hands. He was flipping through one of his old record sleeves, Miles Davis, kind of blue. His wedding ring was gone. Dad? He looked up, startled. Leah, you're here early. I found the papers. His eyes darted away. Ah, your mother wasn't supposed to— Well, it doesn't matter now. It matters to me, I said. Why is my name on them? He exhaled slowly, like this was all just a burden he had to endure. Your mother thought it'd be easier if you managed the details. She said you'd want to help. Help? I laughed, though nothing about this was funny. Help you two dismantle your life? He didn't respond. He just stared at the carpet. That silence, his lifelong weapon. Did you even read what she put in there? I pressed. She's dividing everything, selling the house. And apparently, I'm the one who agreed to it. He rubbed his temple, the way he used to when Mom's voice got too sharp. Your mother has always handled things her way. That's not an answer. He finally looked at me. I didn't want to fight her, Leah. Not anymore. She said this would be clean. You'd sign off, we'd all move on. Peace for once. There it was. That word again. Peace. I'd been chasing it my entire life, mistaking quiet for harmony. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a whisper. You both used me, he flinched. We just thought you'd understand. Understand. Like when I was 12 and Mom locked herself in the bathroom for hours after one of their arguments, and Dad sent me to coax her out. You're her favorite, Leah, he'd said, handing me tissues through the crack in the door. Or when I was 20, and he'd confessed over coffee that he stayed married for my sake. Their whole relationship had been one long guilt trip with me as the toll collector. I turned and walked out, back into the hallway lined with framed smiles. I passed the family photos, the ones where we looked perfect. Every image felt like a lie. In my old bedroom, the one with yellow walls and faded posters, I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe. My chest ached. I reached for my phone, desperate to distract myself, when a notification popped up. Statement alert. Joint savings withdrawal. I frowned. That account was supposed to be for emergencies. One Mom and I had kept for just-in-case moments. I opened the banking app. My stomach dropped. Thousands gone, withdrawn a week ago, and the note under the transaction read, legal fees. I felt the blood drain from my face. Before I could process, Dad appeared at the door. Leah, your mother wants to talk. No, I said. I've done enough talking. He hesitated, guilt flickering in his eyes. She told me you offered to help her with that account. My voice broke. She told you what? That it was your idea. That you wanted her to be free. The walls of my childhood room seemed to tilt, closing in. The same room where I'd hidden from their shouting. Where I'd promised myself I'd never become like them. And now, somehow, I was the villain in their story. I stormed downstairs, every step shaking the floor. Mom was back at the table, phone in hand, texting someone. Did you use my savings? I demanded. She looked up, unbothered. It wasn't just yours. We agreed it was for family matters. Legal fees for your divorce aren't family matters. She set her phone down with deliberate calm. You're overreacting. You said you wanted me to be happy. No, Mom. I said I wanted you to stop hurting each other. Well, this is how that happens. Her voice was too even, too rehearsed. Every word felt like it had been prepared for some invisible audience. I wanted to throw the papers at her, tear down the photographs, scream until something shattered. But instead I went cold. You lied to him, I said quietly. You told him I encouraged this. Her eyes flickered just for a moment. He needed a reason to accept it. So you gave him me? The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the clock seemed to stop. I looked around. The house felt like a museum of manipulation. Every photo, every piece of furniture, every corner held evidence of how I'd been trained to keep them together. I'd been their glue, their counselor, their therapist, their hostage. And suddenly, I saw it clearly. This divorce wasn't the end of their story. It was the latest act in the same endless play. And I was still their script. That realization made something inside me snap. I walked to the study, Dad's old desk, cluttered with receipts and dusty files. I opened a drawer looking for answers. And there it was, a printed email chain. My name copied on every line. Messages between my parents and the lawyer, dated 3 months ago. Leah will sign when the time comes. She's practical. She won't ask questions. Use her address for correspondence. my address, my identity, used like a prop in their quiet little war. The rage that rose in me was unlike anything I'd felt before. Hot, raw, pure. I grabbed the papers and stormed back into the kitchen, slamming them onto the counter. "I spent my whole life holding this family together," I said, my voice trembling. "If you wanted to break it, you didn't have to use my hands to do it." Dad winced. Mom just stared. Then, with a calmness that chilled me, she said, "You always needed to be the savior, Leah. We just let you." It wasn't shouted. It wasn't cruel in tone. It was worse than that. It was true enough to hurt, and cold enough to kill something inside me. For the first time in my life, I saw the full architecture of their control, how every kindness had been a hook, every compliment a leash, and in that moment, I stopped being their daughter. I was just the last character left in a family script I never wrote. That night, the house didn't feel like a home. It felt like a stage after the actors had left, empty, echoing, full of ghosts. I sat alone in the living room, the divorce papers still on the table beside me, their crisp edges catching the light from the old lamp. Every tick of the clock sounded louder, each one cutting through the silence like a small, merciless reminder. Everything I thought I knew was gone. I should have left right then. But something held me there, a stubborn need to understand the ruins before walking away from them. I wandered through each room, tracing my fingers over the walls, over memories that suddenly felt like someone else's life. The wallpaper in the hallway still had faint pencil marks where Dad measured my height every birthday. In my old bedroom, the faint smell of my mother's perfume clung to the curtains. I sat on the bed, pulled open the nightstand, and found my old journals stacked neatly inside. The first one was pink, with a gold lock I used to think made me sophisticated. I opened it to a random page from when I was 14. Mom cried again. Dad says she's dramatic. I tried making them tea. They stopped fighting for a bit. I think I helped. I turned the page. They're arguing about money again. Dad said I shouldn't take sides, but if I don't talk to Mom, she says I'm cold. I wish they'd stop making me choose. My own handwriting stared back at me like a witness. Every line, every entry, me trying to fix them, understand them, earn their love by keeping their peace. I wasn't living. I was managing their emotions, their storms, their silences. By the time I reached my 20s, the ink had changed color, but the story hadn't. Called Mom after her fight with Dad. She says she can't talk to him anymore. Dad says she's impossible. I wish they'd realize I'm not their therapist. I laughed, a hollow, aching sound that didn't feel like mine. Somewhere between those pages, I had stopped being their daughter and become their emotional insurance policy. Every crisis cashed another part of me. I found a blank page near the end and picked up a pen. For the first time, I started writing something that wasn't about them. It wasn't a diary entry. It wasn't a list. It was a statement. I am not the keeper of other people's peace. I paused, then kept going. I am not responsible for their choices. I will not fix what others break just because I know how to hold the pieces. I choose to stop being the bridge they burn and then expect to rebuild. By the time I finished, tears blurred the ink, but I didn't care. I felt lighter, like I'd taken my first real breath in years. When the sun began to rise, I was still awake, sitting at the same table where I'd found the divorce papers. The papers were still there, neat and untouched, their weight strangely diminished by what I'd written in my own notebook. I heard movement upstairs. The creak of the floorboards. A door closing? They were up. I didn't plan a speech. I didn't need one. I was done rehearsing. Mom came down first, still in her robe, her face stiff with unspoken words. Dad followed, slower, cautious, his hands shoved into his pockets. They both froze when they saw me sitting there, calm, waiting. I read everything, I said. The emails. The paperwork. The lies. Mom's jaw tightened. Dad looked at the floor. I'm not signing, I continued. I'm not your executor. I'm not your mediator. And I'm done being your daughter if daughter means caretaker. Mom blinked, her composure cracking. Leah, be reasonable. This is family business. No, Mom, I cut in gently. It's your business. And I'm closing my account. Dad let out a slow, almost relieved sigh. Maybe that's for the best. Mom turned on him sharply. Don't you dare encourage this. Then to me, after everything I've done for you, I met her gaze steadily. Yes, after everything. And because of everything. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, but I didn't rush to fill it. I just looked at them, the two people who'd built their lives around control and called it love, and finally saw them as they were. Small, scared, human. I'm not angry anymore, I said softly. Just done. Mom's eyes flashed, the old fire of defiance flickering back. You think walking away makes you strong? No, I said. It makes me free. Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. Leah. I stood, gathered my bag, and slipped my handwritten declaration inside. Then I turned to both of them. Thank you, I said. Mom frowned. For what? For showing me exactly what I don't want to become. She stared, searching for something to say, but the words wouldn't come. I walked toward the door. Behind me, the house was silent again, except for the faint shuffle of papers on the table. When I glanced back one last time, the morning light had fallen across them, catching the space where my name was supposed to be. 2 signatures. 1 blank line. I smiled, and I left it that way. Months later, I recorded this story from my new apartment. It's small, just 2 rooms, but it's mine. The windows face east, and every morning the light spills across the walls like forgiveness. Sometimes I still wake up expecting the phone to ring, to hear my mother crying or my father sighing, asking me to fix something again. But then I remember I resigned from that job. The quiet here feels different. Not the silence of avoidance, but the peace of choice. I cook what I like. I play my own music. I keep flowers by the window, and when they wilt, I don't rush to replace them. I let them go. I'm still learning what it means to have a life that isn't defined by someone else's pain. Some days it feels like freedom. Some days it feels like grief. But every day it feels like mine. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever been the one holding everything together while falling apart inside, then maybe this is your sign too. Because sometimes, family doesn't break you out of cruelty. It breaks you out of habit. And the moment you stop saving people who refuse to heal, you finally start saving yourself. What would you have done if you found those papers with your name on them? If this story spoke to you, follow for more true-to-life dramas about women who stop surviving and start reclaiming.